On today's show, an absolutely wild, out of control, who knows what the heck was happening. Baseball is super, super funny sometimes, despite the loss. We're recapping last night's game between the Padres and the Astros and all the weirdness that took place. And for everybody, even though it was a loss, to calm down just a little bit. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Wednesday, September 18th. As always, I am your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You might be familiar with my other baseball-related work over at justbaseball.com, a fantastic website where I write about the Padres and other stuff. And then speaking of other stuff, I also host a podcast called Baseball vs. the World, which is just evergreen, very silly baseball topics. We recently did an episode based off of, two episodes actually, based off all the movies that, if I had to pick a movie that represented every American League and every National League team, what would it be? Tune in. See what I said for the Padres. Of course, though, guys, you can follow me, as always, on Twitter, at Javipeno, best handle in the game, JAVIIPENO. If you want just show updates and Padres stuff only, although I almost always tweet about the Padres, frankly, check out at @LO_Padres as well. Today's episode, guys, we were recapping last night's game, and it was, like... I know this is like sacrilegious to say. I know that people don't like saying this. I know that it's funny, we just talked about yesterday how it's important to cherish the goodness in baseball. It's important to enjoy things and not view things, at least in my opinion, in a less myopic way, in a less binary way, and just be like, you know what, this season has just been objectively fun. So this kind of rides with it, which is that it was a good loss last night because, frankly, that game was entertaining as hell, and I thought that it was just drunk out of its mind, and I just don't understand what was going on. It was so weird. It was beautiful. I really, really enjoyed last night's game, even though it ended in a loss, and it was an impactful loss, too. And we're going to get into all of that, starting with a word from one of our sponsors, and that is, of course, the sponsor of today's show, guys. That is our good friends over at GameTime. Let me tell you guys, GameTime, they are very fantastic. Today's episode is brought to you by them. Go check them out, download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. But actual for real this time, first thing we got to talk about is first Michael King, who is going to be forgotten about, frankly, based off of this start. 7 innings, 2 earned runs on 5 hits, 1 walk, 7 Ks, and basically all of his trouble came early on in the game, for the most part, in the top of the 4th inning with a John Singleton double and then a Jeremy Pena ground out. So really, like, only a few mistakes. King was great. Yet again, draining 14 whiffs on all of his pitches combined. He looked really, really sharp, especially with his 4-seam fastball, which is one of his pitches that isn't always, super dynamite. I feel like his changeup is kind of one of his calling cards. I feel like the sinker a little bit. I just think that he's this guy that's really just grown into something impressive. A pitcher who has figured out whatever it's taken to not just be a solid contributor for this team, but be a genuine force in this rotation. And it's awesome because we're going to have him next year too. And I think that one of the most exciting things about him is just, it wasn't a guarantee that this would happen. Michael King's numbers before the year were very good. He had a low ERA and he had a crazy good strikeout rate. But even still, he didn't necessarily have all the experience. He never threw this many innings before. And what I think is interesting about the Padres is that these past few years, they're starting to show that maybe they know something about putting starting pitching rotations together. Because last year, a similar thing happened with Seth Lugo, who had only been a reliever, came to the Padres, and he was a pretty solid starting pitcher. And then he went to the Royals and became like a Cy Young contender, right? So yeah, I do miss Seth Lugo a little bit, our boy, and Puerto Rican boy as well, by the way. So you guys know how I feel about that. But yeah, like Seth Lugo genuinely turned into like an incredible pitcher, and he's, for at least a good amount this year, he doesn't strike out as many people as you'd like. He's not that amazing, but really good pitcher, 3.05 ERA. And it's funny that I say 3.05 ERA because that is just 1 point less than Michael King's current ERA on the season at 3.04. I think that if you also take into account Michael Wacha, if you take into account what they've been able to do with Martin Perez or Matt Waldron, at least for the majority of this season before RIP, we love you, Waldron, we love you very much. But I think that they've been able to put together really good rotations and I think get a lot out of players that we're not used to, right? And I remember hosting this podcast just in 2020 talking about how the Padres are so bad at developing pitching. And it feels like they were a team. And I literally have talked to some people who are in the industry and some people who have connections for like literally in other organizations, talking about how there used to be a little bit of an unspoken word that they're like, hey man, if it comes to it, try trading for Padres pitchers, try trading for Padres prospect pitchers, because they don't know what they're doing over there. So you have to give credit to not just the front office and the coaching staff, especially with Ruben Niebla. You have to do all of that. You can't just only give it to the pitchers. I think that this has been really, really an amazing development. And again, Michael King has been excellent this season. And one of the things we talked about yesterday as well was about the playoff rotation and how that's going to go. And for the record, the Padres still, just in case you guys think I'm being presumptuous, it's for good reason. According to FanGraphs, they have a 99.4% chance to make the playoffs. So again, don't look at me like it seems like it's going to happen. So this is why we're talking about it, that King also has a really diverse repertoire. You know what I'm saying? And his worst pitch this year has been his fourth-seam fastball. But if you look at just some of the numbers on him, where he's been throwing it, getting a little bit unlucky, his batting average against those pitches is 260, which isn't great, but expected batting average of 227. All of his pitches have been pretty great this year, and he's been the most consistent starter. Basically for the Padres this year. You had moments with Waldron, don't get me wrong. You've had some great moments with Cease, don't get me wrong. Musgrove has been a lot better, right? Like, you've had good pitching, but King has been there through the whole season, which is why if I was voting Cy Young, that I think that I would rank him up there pretty high. I think he could be third, actually, behind a Skeens potentially, and behind, of course, probably the presumptive winners, Chris Sale. Only because, like, basically after that first month of a 4.71 ERA, 3.0 the next month, 2.67, 1.82, 2.73, 2.0 in September, and 3 starts so far. Like, he basically just had 1 month of weirdness when he was figuring things out, when he was getting used to the grind of being a starting pitcher, and when he was figuring out his literal pitching repertoire, which we've talked about on the show before. So shouts to Michael King. He was excellent. Rest of the pitching, not as much, but I can't blame him too much because, you know, Jason Adam had literally, did he give up a run before this? He had a 0.41 ERA with the Padres before this, gives up 1 earned run, gets into a little bit of trouble. It is a good Astros team. It's fine. I'm not worried about him at all. They end up using Robert Suarez in this game, despite the fact that it was a save situation. We headed to extra innings. AJ Monahan gives up some runs, but all in all, we're going to talk at the end about just the need to calm down, I think, sometimes, and maybe I'm mistakenly taking what I see in my Twitter bubble and then just friends I know and baseball discourse as being like, oh wow, these people are freaking out, when in actuality I think most people are just really happy with this team right now. But even still, we're going to talk about it. And also in this game, unfortunately, our boy Luis Arraez, 0 for 5, does not come up clutch in the last inning as well. Just something to keep an eye on real quick. Just keep a tiny eye on it. First 0 for 5 game in a while. He struck out too, by the way. So you know he's pissed about that. But first 0 for game in a while. And I'm just saying, right after that knee thing, keep it on the radar. I'm not saying that he's hurt still. I'm just saying, hopefully he isn't. Because we saw what was happening when he was playing through injury, where he was still a fine player, but he was very much not what they had necessarily shopped for, what they asked for in the first place. So just keep a little bit of an eye on that. A tiny, tiny bit. Hopefully he's okay. And if he's not, baseball gods, I will literally do anything. But before we get into the rest of the game and the parts that were really zany and ridiculous, because I can't wait to talk about this. This was the most, I'm like in my room for some reason. I just decided to be surrounded in darkness watching this game, and I put it on my laptop and I was just watching there. I also did it because I wanted to, on my phone, like play my little game that I play while I was watching, because baseball, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just watching like, what is going on? I thought I was in like the Twilight Zone with all the darkness around me. And we'll get into that, guys. But first, let me tell you about one of our sponsors today. They are fantastic. They are the good folks over at Fan of the Duel. You know FanDuel. We've been having them sponsoring this podcast for a while, so shouts to them, and shout out to them being the #1 sportsbook in America. And now through September 22nd, so just a few more days, get in on it fast. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 on anything and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube base plan, you will be able to watch every regular season out-of-market afternoon game for the rest of the NFL season. And since you are likely probably in America, listen to this podcast. If you're not, and you're a big football fan, shouts to you. If you're not, and you're not a football fan, still shouts to you. We love you. But for all the football lovers, you don't want to miss out on this deal. America's #1 sportsbook. Go check it out. 4 more days and 3 weeks of free trials of all those games you might want to watch that out of market. Go check it out, guys. But that's not the only sponsor for today's show, and not the only sponsor for this first segment. It is also our friends over at GameTime that we got to give a shout out to, guys. Love GameTime. It is just one of those apps that kind of makes buying tickets easier, and everybody wants things that make things easier, and that is what GameTime does for you. It is an app where the tickets literally go down the closer you get to game time. Like literally not get closer to the game time, yeah, like the start. So kickoff, tip off, first pitch, whatever you want to call it, it gets lower. You have all these flash deals, all these zone deals, little segment zones of the stadium. They'll pick out one for you and you get a big discount, all sorts of stuff. And they have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier, filtering out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So folks, what on earth and Jack Rabbity Doodah are you waiting for? Go check out Game Time, take the guesswork out of buying tickets, create an account, download the app, then create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? It is game time, everybody. Go check it out. And with that, everybody, we are back here thriving and vibing. It's segment number 2 of this episode. I also want to say apologies for the late upload again. Won't have a late upload tomorrow's episode, especially because the game's early and I'm more free. We'll be right in your, podcast feed immediately after you wake up. But I woke up with a mean migraine today. Maybe it's because of the weirdness of last night's game. Like I said, it felt like the game was drunk. So maybe I had a hangover, like what's that called? Like virtuously vicarious drunkenness. Is that how that works? I don't know what I'm even saying right now, but this game basically is just like, oh no, the Dodgers lost and it's 2-0 and heading into the bottom of the 6th inning, and we're all really annoyed. You know what I mean? The Astros had sent out their boy Hunter Brown in this game, and he was dealing for the most of the game. He wasn't giving up hard contact. He's an okay pitcher, still has some stuff to prove, but he was cutting down the Padres lineup, and it was really frustrating to see with certain at-bats. They just weren't able to bring runners in, but we did have a couple of heroes. Not too many heroes. It was not an offensive slugfest or anything like that, but Manny Machado in the bottom of the 6th inning, this dude's just too cold, man. I mean, I just can't get over this. And one of the things, and if you just want to be petty, I think it's really encouraging that a player like Machado, who has basically been, not his whole career, especially because he was in the American League with the Orioles for a while, but him and Nolan Arenado have both been these like star caliber third basemen for so long that people can't help but compare the two. And I'm not like dancing on the grave of Nolan Arenado, but he has not been very good this year. And I think it's really encouraging to see that Manny, unlike Arenado, has not fallen off. Right? Like that has not happened. And I think that that's really exciting. Some people might say Arenado was injury related, or it might be that he's not in cores anymore if you're a hater. But Arenado, 99 WRC plus this year. He's basically just a defensive guy who's like a barely above average at bat at best right now in his career. Same thing goes for Paul Goldschmidt, by the way. But Manny Machado, this guy has been on fire for so long that I'm kind of almost sick of talking about it. He's 3rd on the team in wins above replacement at 3.4 on the season. He's got a 123 WRC plus. And what I like about him too is that he started off so poorly that these numbers are impressive, right? The fact that he almost has put up a 4-win season, despite being pretty useless. And by the way, if you look at advanced stats, not necessarily having the best defense of his career either. The fact that he had those horrible months to begin the season when he was just genuinely miserable. For those who don't remember, Manny Machado and Xander Bogaerts, like we were at the beginning of this season, like genuinely wondering like if we're screwed and that we just paid these guys at the wrong time. 96 WRC plus in March and April, and then a 75 in May. It was like, what are we doing? He's not playing defense well. Ever since, by month, 145, 132, 158, 151. I mean, come on. It's September. Now, granted, in September, we just got here, but even still, just absolutely phenomenal stuff from our guy. And it's not like he's been getting lucky either. And he got unlucky last night with 2 really bad calls, or at least one definitely bad call, and then one call that was marginal, right? The 4th and 5th pitches of this at-bat, Manny gets pissed because the 4th pitch is outside the plate, way too outside the plate, and it is called a strike, so he's annoyed. And then the 5th pitch, which maybe like it's like right on top of the line of the batter's box. I'm actually putting an image of it on YouTube right now if you're watching there. That like that call, I don't have an issue with you calling that a strike or a ball, frankly. Like it's one of those marginal calls. But the problem was that like usually after you like it's just annoying to see that like a 50-50 ball after you got something that was clearly supposed to be a ball, also the 50-50 one doesn't go your way. That must be super frustrating, right? And you might argue that it was a little bit more ball than strike. So Manny's pissed, and then what does he do right after that? Well, first he fouls off a pitch, then he goes with the 7th pitch of the at-bat, absolutely yeets one into center field, looking bad, doing the bat flip. Manny Machado is just so cold. He has this like, attitude isn't the right word. But passion, aura, dare I say, the aura of this team in general, but especially with Manny, when like, hell hath no fury like a Manny's scorns, you know? You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what Machado has been like this season, especially basically after those first 2 months. So shouts to Manny, and I'm not trying to hate. It's really cool to see that he's still able to do it and that we have not seen a fall off, especially after his surgery, right? So good stuff from Manny Machado. But that wasn't it, guys. We have an Alex Bregman walk that allows Yordan Alvarez to score. There was a wild pitch here. Dang you, silly boy. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Dang you, Padres, but it happens sometimes. What can I say? Like I said, just an absolutely wild game, wild pitches. And speaking of wild pitches, the Padres against their nemesis, bottom of the 8th inning. They've got some runners on base. But we're nervous because what happens? Brian Presley comes in. First, Tatis, though, immediately doubles off him. I don't really know what happened with Brian Presley, by the way, for the Astros. That guy was good for like an elite level closer for a long time, and now he's just like, eh. But anyway, Tatis doubles off him immediately. We love that. I love the like Tatis doubles and extra base hits lately. Like he's been excellent in that. Jerks and Profar grounds out. Tatis gets to third base. Machado strikes out swinging. And then they bring in for Jackson Merrill, in my opinion, very smartly, one Sir Josh Hader. And you can't tell me that the Padres weren't like, we want to get this guy back. Because if you've read any of the body language, if you've read literal quotes from not just Mike Schilt, but also guys like Joe Musgrove talking about Hader, taking subliminal like shots at him being a guy. And of course, now he decides that he's down to go more than one inning and be used whenever. They bring him in to face Jackson Merrill. And understandably so, by the way. Understandably so, because Jackson Merrill has been this superhero, and I think that you're basically saying, you know what, we got Manny, but let's not take any chances with this. Let's just bring in our best relief pitcher. I'm always a fan of that, by the way. I think the idea of a closer, I think if you have in the 8th inning the top of the lineup and you're winning by 1, I think it's totally fine to be like, let's bring our Robert Suarez in. Let's bring our Emmanuel Clase in. Use him in the 8th inning if you have to. Because then the next innings or whatever, you don't have as deep of a lineup, so you'd rather use it that way. I'm totally down for that, being like, let's use our best against their best. And that's what they did here. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't quite go their way, does it? First pitch, wild pitch, way off the plate, allowing Tatis to score. Crowd goes nuts. Ha ha, take that, Josh Hader. I will say with Josh Hader that I'm down with being on the side of let's like hate this guy, like this is our new sworn nemesis. I'm down with it, I get it. But I also, just a tiny bit, and maybe we should save this for another, frankly, maybe this shouldn't be said on a Padres podcast, but like, I kind of get him being like, man, I want to get paid first. You know what I mean? Like, let's remember what this league and frankly this world does to its employees oftentimes if they don't get their contract and money in, right? And especially because he'd been scorned, to reuse that word again, by the Brewers organization that continually screwed with him and used him in weird situations, used ERA and used saves against him. Like, it's more to it than that. That being said, screw him. We love it. Jackson Merrill then ends up grounding out basically immediately after that, which is very funny, but it kind of, the damage was done. It's just so funny that clearly the Padres fan base, definitely the Padres fan base, and probably even the Padres locker room, clubhouse, based on those quotes from Musgrove and Schilt early on in the season, when hyping up Robert Suarez, that they really wanted to do it against Hader. Wasn't it beautiful? It was beautiful. And that wasn't it, folks. We also had the top of the 9th inning. And again, on top of the Hader thing, on top of the wild pitches that we threw, you also have just one of the more obscene I don't know if any of you guys follow John Boys. He is one of the like creative heads over at Secret Base. He does a lot of great content over there. But one of his bits is people tweeting at him watching baseball, and they just will share a weird clip of what happens. That's the moment that you got last night with Jose Altuve of the Astros, guys. And unfortunately, I can't talk about it just yet because I got to talk to you about a new sponsor of this show, folks. That's right. Brand freaking new. It is our buddy old pals over at Arena Club. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more, you know, an Ellie De La Cruz, Mahomes rookie card, you know what I mean? Like that's crazy bread. Just isn't in the cards, right? Like that pun there. I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. I do it with comic books, for example. Thanks to slab packs from Arena Club. ArenaClub.com. Now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I listed was a hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. It's really, really cool stuff. It's accurate, fast, and transparent with a full grade rationale provided, an explanation of how your card was scored. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you have to check out. And let me tell you, I got some cards lying around that I might be checking out myself. Do I have some Padres players in my collection? Oh, I might, folks. I ain't telling you about them. Oh, no. That's just between me and God, and especially the gods of arenaclub.com. Go check them out, guys. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack of card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnMLB and use code LockedOnMLB. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnMLB, code LockedOnMLB for 10% off your first purchase. You got that? Go check it out. We love you, Arena Club. We love you. Go check them out. And just like that, everybody, we are back thriving and vibing as always into the final segment of this Locked On Padres podcast. I was very mean in the last segment, so let's get into it. No tease. Jose Altuve. Robert Suarez is brought in. We love it, the hype and all that stuff. Jeremy Pena does hit a double, but after that, Jason Hayward flies out. Victor Caratini strikes out looking. Another former Padre getting not exposed, but getting beaten in San Diego. So that was fun, I guess. But we love Caratini. We love Caratini very much. Remember that Reds walk-off? That was great. And then Jose Altuve has one of the weirder things you've seen in a while, which is he hits a ball that I don't really know, frankly. Like, just I'm trying to be as unbiased and objective as possible. Like, he hits the ball and he claims that it hit off of his foot, so it would be a foul ball. But instead, it's not called that, and instead it's hit to Manny, who then throws it to first, and Altuve loses it. Absolutely loses it. He's ridiculous. He's beside himself. Manager of the Astros comes out. He's beside himself. Everybody's losing their mind because he's like, this is ridiculous. Like, that wasn't a foul ball. Or I'm sorry, that wasn't a fair ball. Like, it hit off of my shoe. And it's not called that way. I frankly, genuinely, like, looking at the replay, like, I can't fully tell. I don't know if it was conclusive enough. And in my opinion, and I know this sounds biased, in my opinion, if you can't fully tell, I like to keep whatever was said on the field, for good or worse. If they ended up calling it a fair ball, right, then whatever. Whatever happens, it's live by this rule, die by this rule. But that's just how I like to approach it. But after that, this was a drunk game. Wild pitch from Padres, wild pitch from Hader on the first one, the Manny tie game after the bad calls. Just, it was like a playoff game type of vibe, and it kind of was in more ways than one, which we'll talk about in a second. But then Altuve then proceeds to take off his shoe and sock, and to show, like, I have a bruise here. You see? It clearly hit off of me. And needless to say, he was ejected from the game. What the heck? And I sometimes feel bad for Jose Altuve because he became the face of the 2017 cheating scandal, despite the fact that we have, like, empirical evidence that Altuve really wasn't the one cheating nearly as much. I think the problem is that he's the face of that team. And I think the bigger problem is that walk-off he had against Aroldis Chapman, and he had the whole, no, don't throw the water on me. And the fact that he had multiple different stories to explain that, I think that's why kind of stuck his foot in it. I do feel a little bit bad for him sometimes, but all in all, nobody else does. And that was hilarious. I had an absolute blast watching that. I was like, what just happened? Unfortunately, the rest of the game doesn't go the Padres' way. Bottom of the ninth, Hader just completely cuts down the lineup with Bogarts, Jake Cronenworth, and Solano, getting 2 strikeouts on Solano and Bogarts. And then Kyle Tucker, who's one of the best players in baseball, really, in a lot of ways. He hits a single that allows Gray Kissinger to score, giving the Astros a 4-3 lead. Of course, the zombie runner on second base being the reason that they scored. Adrian Morejon is the one who gives up the hits. I've talked before about how I still think Morejon's a very good pitcher. His 2.98, or I'm sorry, is it 2.98? 2.9 ERA speaks to that. I think he's very good. I really do. I think that he's really solid. Estrada comes into the game and cuts down the rest of those outs, gets 1 strikeout. Like, he salvages it, only making it that it's a 1-run lead for the Astros. Morejon, Yuki, I think, is factual that this guy just can't pitch in high leverage situations, and he's still got stuff to work on because he just keeps giving up like brutal hits that if the Padres are up by 4, he makes it a 1-run game, or if the Padres are only down by 1 or 2, and based on what you know about this offense, that really matters, knowing that this is the type of offense that could come back, he gives up home runs and blows that, right? So the other one, though, that is a little bit like that is Morejon. Still a great reliever that I hope they use in the playoffs, and they need to, because, look, not every reliever can be Robert Suarez. I've said this before. But just a little tiny bit worried about him. And I'm a little tiny bit worried about Estrada. But all in all, this Padres bullpen is just unbelievable. Like, you really can't have too many complaints. I'm just saying those guys make me more nervous than the others as I hiccup into the microphone. My bad. But unfortunately, the game ends in a way that kind of, man, that would have been great. First and third, nobody out in the bottom of the 10th inning with Arraez, Tatis, and Profar up. Arraez hits into a fielder's choice. Unfortunately, again, 0 for 5 game. Keep a tiny little monitor on that. Then Tatis, Profar actually gets hit by a pitch, so it leaves the bases loaded. And then Manny hits a ball that I thought was actually like contact. Like, I thought the contact was good. Unfortunately, it just did not result in a hit this time. It's not like I'm upset about it. It just stinks when this happens, I think, in a lot of ways. But it had an expected batting average of 450, 103.2 miles per hour off the bat. Again, he hit the ball well. It just didn't bounce our way. To me, out of all of them, first of all, Profar might have got lucky with the hit by pitch. There was a little bit of words exchanged too, so we'll see if that flares up again tonight. Profar just that man is an irritant for opponents, right? Like, he just drives everyone insane. But the only one that I'm upset with is Tatis, because Tatis has a really poor at bat. 3 pitches, 3 strikes, swinging strikes, especially the one that was inside on him. That one he shouldn't have been swinging at. And then the pitch low and away, that was awful. He's the only one, and he knows it. Tatis every now and then gets a little jumpy in these situations. It's like he's so excited. Like, he wants to be the guy. He wants to live up to his contract and live up to his super. He loves it. He wants to be the star. He wants to bring San Diego championships. And I think he gets sometimes a little bit overeager at the plate in those instances. Sometimes. But that only means, the only thing that does is it means you get really poor at bats like that. But all in all, Tatis has been great in high leverage situations. So there's a little gray area that I'm talking about right now. Just sometimes he has these really crappy at bats because he gets a little bit jumpy, in my opinion anyway. Unfortunately, he strikes out. But again, with those hits, like the Arraez hit, that's just something that happens with him sometimes. You know what I mean? He's a batting average on balls in play type of guy. And it's not like he hit the ball particularly hard. He never really does all that much. Just didn't have it that time. Manny was unlucky. It's just, it happens, you know what I mean? And I think that, here's the thing though. Some people were complaining, they were talking about Morejon, they were talking about how we can't hit and all that stuff, and we let them down. And again, this might be the Padres Twitter ecosphere, right? It might just be that. But to me, I just can't be mad. I'm not mad at Tatis. I just told you. Like, I just explained why. I just think that, yes, it does stink that this game felt like a playoff game because of all the weirdness and how drunk it was, and someone needs to send this game into an Uber like ASAP, pay for the ride too, give it some water, throw some extra water bottles in the Uber because it was that drunk. I think that it is really unfair to make takeaways in a baseball season, not football, not basketball, not soccer, not hockey, in a baseball season where it's 162 games, and make these all-encompassing proclamations that how could they not do that? It's like, yeah, but guys, you know how like the past 2 months, that's all they've been doing? That's why we were so excited. We thought down 4-3, first and third, with those guys up, we're clearly going to take the lead. And sometimes you just won't. And that's not an indictment or reflection at all on this team's ability and this team's quality. So I'm not upset about that at all. So everyone, be calm, be patient, and stay vibing. It's okay. I understand that I think it was especially frustrating because the Dodgers lost last night. And they lost to the freaking Marlins, of all teams, who were able to score 11 runs on them. So you're saying, wow, we have an opportunity to get closer and hopefully aim for that NL West crown. And then here come the Padres, first and third, you're about to take the lead again, and how do you not get that W to make it a little bit closer? It's unfortunate, but remember, it's not over yet, right? Like, it's not over yet. You could still hope for the Padres to take that wild card spot and throw it in the trash and take the division. They're 3 games behind the Dodgers for first place in the NL West. And remember that we do have a 3-game set against them. And remember that the Dodgers still have some other games against other teams to play, including us. But after the Marlins series, they then play the Rockies, Padres, then Rockies. So again, okay, you know what? Maybe we need to look at this and say, I don't know, but the fact that they get like really crappy teams at the end of this season is unfortunate, right? Like, that's just unfortunate timing. But after this Miami series, I get it though. I get that it's frustrating that this might be the only game Miami wins of this series. And you drop this Astros game that you clearly had right in there. So I get the frustration, but in general, just remember how good this team has been. Remember that this is easily the best team during the AJ Preller tenure, basically bar none. Like, that's how good they've been. And it's not impossible. They could go out and get beat by the Rockies. Crazier things have happened before. They just lost, who was it? Tyler Glasnow to injury. Like, this is a team that is not really, it's kind of limping its way into the postseason. It's still a very good team, but it's limping a little bit more. So don't give up. Have faith that this team, this Padres team, can come and maybe steal that NL West crown. And as I've said before, law of averages, at some point the Dodgers can't win the division. So just keep hoping for that. But that series against them, that's going to be huge. So just latch on to that. I know it's frustrating, but just remember, not only what am I saying today, but what I said yesterday. Enjoy the fact that there are so many other things to be happy about with this Padres team. It's been a blast. Pikachu loves it. Tatis loves it. Let's just enjoy. But of course, guys, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast. The only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno, and at @L_Padres. Great handles, I understand. Tomorrow's episode, we will be recapping this last game of this Astros series, and we will be, of course, staying locked into that playoff picture. And then might have a special Padres prospect on the show. His name is yet to be revealed, because I want to make sure for sure that I got him on the show. You know what I mean? I want to make sure that he's on. But it is a Padres prospect who will be on the show, hopefully, for this would be Friday's show. So look forward to that. But until that next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies, take care.